Modern and mid-century modern. They sound similar. They even overlap in some ways. But once you put them side by side, the differences become impossible to ignore. One is sleek, quiet, and all about control. The other is warm, expressive, and just a little bit retro. This isn't just about furniture, it's about how each style makes you feel. And if you've ever found yourself torn between clean lines and vintage charm, this breakdown is going to help you figure out exactly what you're looking at and maybe what you're looking for. So let's kick things off by talking about colors, starting with modern design. Modern interiors keep color neutral, tonal, and restrained. They've got white walls, beiges, and soft grays that dominate that palette, creating a calm atmosphere where structure and materials stand out. You'll often see black accents that provide this sharp geometry, while pale woods, stone, and concrete add a subtle bit of warmth. And color itself is rare, used only as punctuation in a vase, a branch, or a piece of muted artwork. So as you can see in this dining room, the black window frames and chandelier cut through the pale backdrop, which shows how these dark accents can provide a sense of boldness without overwhelming the room. The warmth of the wood floor keeps the contrast from feeling too stark, which softens that modern edge. Then here, the staircase layers beige and pale wood tones, which reduces the visual noise and lets the architectural forms stand out. The tones flow seamlessly from the stairs to the floor, which creates this unified and calming effect. And then the bathroom stays tonal and monochromatic, with soft beige walls, these flowing white curtains, and a white freestanding tub that all blend together. And so the result is polished and serene, with no single element distracting from the quiet balance of the room. And then this living room is a perfect example of how texture can replace color. We've got layers of ivory upholstery, this pale wood, and these stone surfaces that make the space feel refined and cohesive without relying on bold contrast. Even the artwork on the wall here is muted, which reinforces that calm, restrained palette. But now let's take a look at how color is used in mid-century modern, which is often just called mid-century. Mid-century interiors lean into warm, earthy hues anchored by walnut, teak, and oak. And unlike modern design, colors are bold and present. Rust, mustard, olive green, burnt orange, and deep reds consistently show up across large surfaces like sofas, rugs, and paneling. So here in this living room, you can see this bright orange sofa sitting against the wood-paneled walls, which shows how bold colors can become central features in a mid-century space. But because it's paired with natural stone and wood, it keeps the overall palette grounded rather than becoming overwhelming. Then this library space combines warm wood cabinetry with a deep green lounge chair and this beautiful patterned rug, mixing earthy neutrals with more saturated tones. And so the result is layered and dynamic, proving how mid-century palettes balance warmth with vibrancy. Then in this living room, we've got more of a burnt orange sofa and some very colorful artwork against that far wall, which is a good example of how to take a neutral space and spice it up by adding some expressive accents. And then in this living room, again, we've got these two burnt orange velvet lounge chairs with yellowish pillows beside a walnut coffee table and the pale block brick fireplace wall. And so the warm hues are anchored by the wood trim and a brass, and all of that is supported by this blue neutral rug that keeps the palette grounded and cohesive. But now let's talk about furniture style, specifically in modern design, because modern spaces keep furniture clean-lined, low profile, and function first. So to recognize it, look for geometric shapes, tight upholstery, and square arms in light wood, metal, or a black finish. So what you see in this living room here are some straight arm sofas and blocky tables that are keeping everything crisp. And the matching lamps and centered art just underlines the room's sense of symmetry and calm. And then in this room, which looks very similar but is actually different, you've got low seating with really slim legs that's keeping the sightlines open around this coffee table. You know, the tight upholstery and the quiet palette of the room just shows how modern design lets proportion do the work. Then in this little dining nook, the hanging geometric pendant light and the mirrored panels add a bit of structure without being heavily ornamental. And the round table stays simple, so the room reads as ordered, not fussy. And then this coffee table close-up shows how modern design leverages smooth surfaces and straight lines, with no tufting and no trim. Even the accessories are edited so the composition feels intentional and highly controlled. Now, contrast all that to mid-century modern, because mid-century pieces lean warm, curved, and lifted up off the floor. They use tapered legs, molded plywood, walnut and teak, and leather and wool. And so the mood is expressive, but still practical. So this living room mixes curved seating and tapered brass-capped legs with a striped rug for a little bit of rhythm. And the wood tones and leather keep the hits of color feeling grounded as opposed to gimmicky. Now, this space features a high-backed, curved chair as a focal point against some playful art behind it. And what I want to point out to you here is that the mix of pieces doesn't have to match, because mid-century thrives on balance over perfect symmetry. Now, everyone knows you can't talk about mid-century modern without talking about the Eames lounge chair and ottoman, which uses molded plywood and leather for comfort and longevity. And the low silhouettes and slim bases in this room give the room a light, floating feel. And then here, this credenza shows off a beautiful walnut finish on these really nice, slim, tapered legs with some colorful art above. And so this is storage with presence, delivering warmth and character without unnecessary bulk. So I've already alluded to a few different materials, but let's take a bit of a deeper dive here, starting with modern design. Because modern spaces prioritize industrial and innovative surfaces, so glass, steel, concrete, and engineered stone, with polished finishes like stainless steel and lacquered cabinets, adding that little bit of crisp precision. Everything is smooth, exact, and intentional, never rustic or distressed. So here, stainless steel countertops and cabinetry reflect light with a polished finish, reinforcing that sleek, engineered look. The pale wood floor adds a little bit of subtle warmth while still fitting the restrained, cool palette of the room. Now, this second kitchen uses lacquered white cabinets and marble countertops for a clean, uninterrupted surface. The flush lines and handle-free cabinetry keep the focus on shape and material instead of on decoration. This exposed stairwell highlights raw concrete walls and the steel staircase, which shows how industrial materials often take center stage. Plus, the matte black railing offers a sharp frame for the space without adding any bulk. And in this fourth example, the engineered stone island and flat slab cabinetry emphasize many people's preference for smooth, handle-free surfaces. The pale wood floor fits the geometry of the room perfectly, which keeps everything precise and intentional. So while many spaces influenced by modern design might be called sleek or potentially cold, mid-century modern spaces focus on natural, warm materials like walnut, teak, and oak. Molded plywood, wool, leather, and brass add richness to those spaces, while terrazzo, brick, and textured ceramics bring that tactile character. And so the overall look is warm and organic, balanced and lived in rather than being polished or industrial. So in the first room here, you see another Eames chair. This one is the Eames LCW, which is made of molded plywood. This is a true classic of a chair that you've probably seen in 1,000 places before, but its lightweight design adds this organic feel without any heaviness, which shows how innovation in materials, and specifically those like plywood, really defined the era of mid-century modern design. Now, this second room brings us back to the Eames lounge chair, but it also shows how warm woods and leather upholstery anchor this palette, right? The walnut coffee table, the teak-framed art, and the caramel leather sofa all display the grain proudly, creating a space that feels textured, honest, and lived in. Here, this terrazzo floored room shows how patterned surfaces can bring a true sense of playful depth. And then the brass accents and earthy textiles keep the room warm and balanced. And then here in this fourth room, we've got a brick fireplace with teak storage spaces and colorful upholstery. And overall, the textures are tactile and inviting, which shows mid-century's preference for surfaces that are refined but never sterile. But we can't truly contrast these two styles of design without talking about art and accessories. So when it comes to modern design, the interiors keep accessories minimal and intentional. So walls are often left blank, and when art is present, it's abstract, oversized, and graphic as opposed to being overly busy. The decor blends right into that color palette instead of competing with it, and it lets the materials and the architecture become the artwork of the space. So this living room keeps the palette tight with abstract black and white art over a super clean sofa. The accessories are subtle, and so this patterned marble coffee table really becomes the real focal point of the room. Here, the single statement pendant light and the hanging fireplace stand in for any clutter. And these big black frame windows and light wood ceiling provide just enough structure and texture to keep the space visually interesting. Now here we've got another fireplace that also acts as the artwork itself, because the veining in the marble is bold enough that any additional decor would just distract. And then here we can see how white walls and clean surfaces give that sense of openness. The accessories are limited to a few carefully placed ceramics, which reinforces that sense of symmetry and calm. But when it comes to mid-century modern spaces, those celebrate bold graphic art and objects that are full of character. I'm talking statement mirrors, colorful posters, quirky sculptures, and vintage ceramics that are all styled openly. The mid-century palette welcomes these vibrant accents, and the materials are layered to feel warm, playful, and lived in. So this first room uses a wall of colored glass vases as both accessory and art. It feels graphic and vibrant, instantly giving the room its mid-century energy. In a similar vein, this space leans on colorful posters and bookshelves filled with unique objects. Nothing feels minimal because all the accessories show personality and a bit of retro charm. Here we've got a very large sunburst mirror that's anchoring the wall, paired with some pattern upholstery and metallic accents. And so the layering of brass, glass, and wood feels intentional but not overly curated. And then this living room shows how vintage art and retro posters can coexist with bold rugs and even a bar cart. And it's this mix of mismatched accents that makes the space warm, inviting, and distinctly mid-century. But now let's talk about technology, because modern interiors make technology front and center, blending it seamlessly into the architecture. I'm talking smart home systems, hidden wiring, and sleek devices all becoming part of the design itself without adding any clutter. So this living room is using integrated lighting and some smart controls to create this unique atmosphere. With recessed lighting strips that double as design features, the tech disappears into the ceiling and walls, so the focus just stays on this clean geometry. In this second room, a flat screen TV is mounted flush to the wall and paired with some built-in cabinets. And the hidden wiring and minimal styling here prove how modern spaces often showcase devices without adding any visual noise. And then this home theater setup shows how speakers and projectors are displayed proudly and with intention. The layout is totally deliberate, with cable management and symmetry making the tech feel built right into the space. But on the contrary, mid-century modern homes treat technology as background support, not as the main event. And the devices themselves are often vintage-inspired or tucked into warm wooden consoles to downplay the presence of technology. So here we've got a record player that's styled to look like part of this room, doubling both as nostalgia and function. And as you can see, its wooden case blends seamlessly with the surrounding space. Now here, a TV sits on a low wooden console surrounded by books, plants, and art. And so the accessories soften the impact of that screen, keeping the room warm and humid. And here we can see how retro-inspired tech feels like part of the design language. Even when this device is new, the form factor still leans vintage, so it reads more like decor than a device. So overall, in modern interiors, technology leads the aesthetic, but in mid-century modern spaces, it supports daily life, but never comes to dominate it. So now you've seen the full picture. Modern design is minimal and restrained. It creates calm by removing distraction. But mid-century modern, on the other hand, leans into personality. It mixes colors, curves, and textures to build something that feels both nostalgic and timeless. Neither one of them is better, but they do tell different stories. And understanding the difference is the first step to making your space feel more like you. So whether you're all in on one style or you're blending the two of them together, now you've got the vocabulary and the visuals to do it with intention. So if you like this video, I've left links to a few similar ones in the description below. Or if you want to take your design knowledge to the next level and start making real changes to your own home, check out this video up here. I'll see you there.